Thursday, April 2nd, 2026.
As the Trump administration has been sending ICE agents into airports, they've also spoken publicly about deploying ICE agents to the polls in November. The idea has been floated by Trump's former strategist, Steve Bannon, addressed by his new DHS Secretary, Markwayne Mullin, and referenced by his personal attorney, who just became the new acting attorney general.
Why is there objection to sending ICE officers to polling places? Illegals can't vote. It doesn't make any sense.
That question seems to telegraph what's ahead in Trump's multi-pronged effort to interfere in state-run elections. Just this week, Trump signed an executive order that would allow the federal government to take over mail-in voting, basically allowing Trump officials to decide who gets to vote. Stacey Abrams is the founder of Fair Fight Action and lead organizer of the 10 Steps campaign against the rise of authoritarianism in the U.S. Today, they launched an initiative to end ICE family detention, and she joins me now. Stacey, it's so good to see you. So, with this executive order targeting mail-in ballots, what would the implications be if DHS were to have the ability to create and control a verified voters list?
So we have to remember that this is all of a piece. These are administrative attempts to shave points. Every election for the last decade has been decided on the margins. We are no longer having landslides. And so their attempt is to limit who gets counted and how many votes can go to the other side. And so we can't look at these as isolated pieces. They are all of a piece. It's the sum of the parts. So you use the mail-in voting restrictions so you can limit senior citizens, rural folks, students, people of color, the disabled, and you stop them from participating. Then you move over to the challenge of building a voting database that has been proven in every state that has tried this. It has been proven to be flawed. In Texas, in Kansas, in Missouri, the number of people who are falsely denied the right to vote went as high as 35% in Missouri. It was about 14% error rate in Texas in just one county. And in Kansas, I think it was almost 30,000 people who were falsely accused of not being entitled to vote, although they'd gone through a naturalization service. And so we know that these attempts are designed to marry together all of the greatest hits of voter suppression so that they can eke out wins wherever they face losses.
You know, Stacey, one of the things that I've been surprised Democrats haven't been speaking out about more clearly is the extent to which the Trump administration has tried to tie election administration to the future of immigration policy in this country. You know, for example, the way that they very explicitly tried to tie the fates of the SAVE Act, which you hear a lot of people describe as a voter ID law, when really it is a show me your citizenship papers in order to be able to vote law. And they tried to tie that in with the DHS funding fight. And I think it tells a very clear story of some of what you're saying there, that sort of speaks to sort of this broader concept of who belongs and how they can shave and reshape this country. But why do you think so few people are seeing these things as linked?
Because we're so trained in this moment by this regime to focus on the crisis in front of us instead of seeing how they've laddered up to this moment. At the very top of this story, you had Todd Blanche saying, oh, why would anyone be concerned about ICE? Well, in 1981, the Republican National Committee had what they called their National Ballot Security Task Force in New Jersey. And they were so egregious. They wore armbands. These were off-duty officers who wore armbands and patrolled polling places with black and brown voters. And it was so effective that the Republican won by, I think, more like around 1,800 votes. It was that narrow. And it was so egregious that a federal court forced a consent decree where Republicans agreed not to have election security forces for 30 years. When did it get lifted? 2018 under Donald Trump. It's because they know that it works. They know that if they can scare black and brown folks who under the Supreme Court right now can be pulled out of line by ICE based on skin color, language, and accent. You don't have to be not a citizen. You simply have to look like someone they don't think should be a citizen. And to your point, Antonia, it's all coming together. We are talking about it, but we have to talk about that and talk about Iran and talk about the detention of thousands of children in this country in prison camps. And so I think part of the challenge is not that Democrats aren't talking about it, it's that we have to hold the public attention when the chaos is so profound and so profuse that it's hard to get people to focus. But that's the reason we have the 10 Steps campaign, and that's the reason we're doing this work.
Is that why you've traveled to Dilley, Texas? Tell me why you're there and what you've learned about our system.
As a children's book author, I've been privileged to write 3 children's books, and one of my books is about different cultures and different communities. Another one is about the importance of speaking up, even if it feels like you may not win. And when I was reading the ProPublica stories about what was happening in Dilley and what's happening around the country and what will get worse with the massive purchase of ICE facilities around this country, they are designed not to hold criminals, but to hold families. And that is why it is time now for us to start this conversation. Read Them Home is about raising public awareness that we have children, we have babies who are in detention facilities right now, being fed moldy food, being denied access to health care. These are babies who are being told that their mental distress is just de rigueur. That's wrong and it is immoral, but it's, to your point, part of a larger narrative about who we believe belongs. It's why the birthright citizenship case was in front of the Supreme Court. But what we're trying to do is help focus not only the mind, but the hearts. If Americans can't remember that children do not deserve to be incarcerated and tortured, then our democracy is already lost. And so we're asking everyone to join us in Reading Them Home. We spent today 12 hours with extraordinary people reading stories to children in absentia. But we're asking every American of good conscience to read a book, to go to readthemhome.org, record yourself reading a children's story, post it online, use the hashtag #ReadThemHome. If millions of us do this, we can start to remind ourselves of who we are and who we say we want to be. That's the important moment that we're facing right now.
Stacey Abrams, thank you so much for putting all these threads, these pieces together, and for your advocacy for children. As someone who's reported on Dilley and other facilities like it, I know how hard it is for those kids to get their stories out there, for their families to feel heard, seen, and respected. So thank you. Thanks for the work you're doing. Still to come, Donald Trump's address caused stocks to fall and oil prices to rise. So what happens next in his war on Iran after this?
All human life is valuable. All human life should be given dignity and respect. That means from cradle to senior citizenship. The Constitution is sacred, and so is the vote.